Cultivating the talent which lies within you and which is naturally given to you begins with determining what your non-negotiables are and using them as a catalyst for prosperity. For Brant Menswar, he has helped organizations such as Netflix, Verizon, Microsoft, ESPN, St. Jude Children's Hospital, and more change what is perceived as possible by encouraging audiences to discover their black sheep values and move forward with deliberate intention. Menswar is one of the country's top 10 motivational speakers. He's a best-selling author and an award-winning musician, and the creator of one of the fastest-growing book discovery apps in the world. And he also describes himself as a self-professed coffee snob. Menswar joined me this week to have a conversation about self-improvement, personal development, discovering your non-negotiables, his zest for life, and so much more. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation.
If you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, buddy. And I'm super excited to learn how you help people live a fulfilling life, buddy. Great to be with you this morning, and thank you so very much for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me, brother. Appreciate the time.
Absolutely. No, I know that you're one of the nation's top motivational speakers. You're also an author, and you also help people discover their non-negotiable values, and you dabble in music. So I'm wondering if you can sort of begin our conversation by giving me sort of a 360-degree view on what makes you so fabulous, my friend.
Well, I spent 20 years in the music business, and that was two different bands, two different record deals, had an opportunity to tour the world, and sort of transitioned away from the music world to the keynote speaking world, which led me to write a couple of books and sort of brought me full circle to still being on a stage, just performing a little differently than I have over the last 20 years or so. Now find myself in front of corporate audiences talking to them about sort of aligning corporate values with personal values.
Yeah, I'm just noticing that the saying on your wall over there, buddy. So tell me what Thoughts That Rock mean to you.
Well, we have, myself and my business partner have our own podcast called Thoughts That Rock, which has been around for we're going on our third year now. And we interview people about the best advice they've ever been given and how it changed their life. And so for us, that's what the podcast sort of has centered around, and continues to this day. We're getting ready to launch the new season at the end of September.
Well, yeah, that's clever marketing there, Brent. Absolutely, buddy.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brent, I'm going to share just a little bit about myself. You know, I also talk to businesses on the notion of inclusion when it comes to employment, buddy, because I was born with spastic quadriplegic cerebral palsy. Simply means that I don't have enough oxygen in my legs to walk normally. And one of my passions is helping businesses understand a notion of an inclusive workplace and incorporating folks with disabilities. So when you talk about inclusion in the corporate sense. I'm wondering uh, your thoughts on the notion of inclusion and infusing individuals with disabilities into the workforce and corporate culture.
I think it comes down to understanding and defining what inclusion means. I think that's where it all starts, right? When I work with values with organizations, they can look good on paper, they can sound good when you talk about them, but unless you define what you actually mean by them, they're subjective. And so when it comes to inclusion, I think first and foremost, you have to define what you mean by inclusion and be very specific with what that definition would be. And then the second part of it is not just espousing that inclusion is one of your values or something like that, or one of the things that you strive for. You need to see proof of it. You need to acknowledge that it actually is happening, because ultimately, if you are professing one thing but people witness something else, you're never going to get the sort of traction that you're looking for, and people simply won't believe that your values are indeed values. And so what happens when that's the case is that employees look at the organization and go, well, if you don't care about your own values enough to honor them, why would you possibly care about mine? And so that's the world that I live in, of helping organizations not just sort of decide what their values are, but how do we speak those values into existence with authority, so that there's enough proof there for both employees and customers to believe that it's actually true.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that your books expand on that theory and the theory of building values around leadership. So tell me about the message that you hope to convey through the written message as well, my friend.
So the last book that I wrote is called Black Sheep, and it's centered around this concept of what I call black sheep values. It wasn't until maybe 4 or 5 years ago that somebody actually took the time to explain to me why farmers don't actually value black sheep like the rest of the flock. And I think when we hear the term black sheep, we think of an outcast of some kind. But in reality, the truth is, the reason that farmers don't value black sheep like the rest of the flock is because a black sheep's wool cannot be dyed. So every black sheep is in effect 100% authentically original, and it can't be made into something it wasn't meant to be. And so with that being the metaphor, can we define and discover what our 5 non-negotiable black sheep values actually are? What are those values that are deeply held core values that no matter how much someone wants to try to influence or twist them, they simply will not be moved like a black sheep's wool?
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, Brent, I always tell people that we make time in life for the priorities that are important to us. So how are our non-negotiables and the priorities in life that are important to us interconnected in your view?
Well, I wouldn't say so much that they're interconnected as much as they are jumbled together. I think that what most of us do is we hold things that are really important to us next to things that we would consider non-negotiable values, but we never pull them apart far enough to determine which are which. And so oftentimes in the work that I do, we spend a lot of time trying to separate what is something that is really important to someone from something that is a non-negotiable. And a non-negotiable means no. So if there's something that violates that value in some way, shape, or form, they simply won't participate in any way, shape, or form. And so the idea for us is, can we separate things that are really important? And we're not questioning their importance. They are really important, but there is a big difference between non-negotiable and really important.
And Brent, I'm curious to get your opinion on how do you think, or what's your definition of really maximizing both life and professional prosperity?
Well, I don't know how you do that unless you know what your non-negotiables are. If you have a purpose in your life, that purpose is the activation of those values. And so someone who thinks that purpose is something you find, I have some troubling news. Purpose is not something you find; it's something you choose, and you choose your purpose by actually activating those non-negotiable values that you have. And so you have to sort of go back and anything about living a life of fulfillment, either personally or professionally, or whatever that looks like. I don't know how you can do that without knowing what your non-negotiable values are, because our goal in life is to honor those things. And in order to do that with deliberate intention, you actually have to know what they are.
Once you know your values, I'm also curious to ask you about discovering your passion in life and how you can use your values to really determine what you're passionate about in life.
Well, again, these are things that are actually interconnected. And so usually something that we're passionate about it because it's attached to one of the things that are most important to us in some way, shape, or form. And so know what those values are. If creativity is one of those values, then you can look and see if you're passionate about art, or you're passionate about music, or you're passionate about anything that involves that creativeness in that sort of style. Then you know that there's connection between passion and values. And so I would say that the goal for you is to, when you know what, if you know what you're passionate about, you can actually sort of trace it back to why you're passionate about it. And in the answer to that why, I'm sure will be some of these values that sort of sit at the center of why these things are something you're passionate about.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, Brad, I'm also wondering your thoughts on how you define effective leadership and creating a collaborative culture.
Mm. So there are five things that I teach when it comes to a collaborative culture, a culture of high performance and maximum engagement, right? So the first thing that you have to be able to sort of have is connection. Connection is the number one shared value among all humans. And so you have to have a place where people feel connected or have the ability to be connected. So that's first. The second thing you have to do is have authenticity. People want to be able to show up as they are, who they are, without fear of ridicule or nervousness of showing up as they truly are. And so if you have connection and you have authenticity in that way, you have to have integrity as well, right? So that integrity is really about creating a safe space where people feel like they can show up as who they truly are. And so you have connection on the front end. People want to show up with authenticity. And in order to do that, they have to have this space of integrity of which they can do that. If they have those three things, then they have an opportunity for growth. And so that last opportunity for growth has to include the ability to create solutions. And so that creativity is the last piece of that. So if we're looking at the five values that are needed for leaders to be effective, they have to have connection, number one, authenticity, number two, they have to have integrity, third, the ability for personal growth, fourth, and also creativity in the sense of the opportunity to create solutions, sort of to allow that connection to start again, and the cycle sort of continues.
Yeah, and I know that you help people find ways to establish that authentic connection and connectivity. So I'm also curious to ask you how you challenge yourself to be 1% better than you were the day before.
Deliberate intention. You have to have deliberate intention. You can't wait for things to happen by accident or luck. You have to program these things into your day. You have to plan when these things want to appear. So with sort of my students that I work with and the people that I coach, it's really about programming these values into your day. If you have an appointment today, you and I were going to do this call. I have to look at my black sheep values, which are creativity, hope, impact, empathy, family, authenticity. I have to look at those and program which of those values need to show up in this conversation with you in order for me to maximize the impact, right? So I want to make sure I show up with authenticity. I want to show up with empathy. That hosting a podcast is tough, right? And your listeners are looking for something of value. And so for me, that ability to have the impact, to be able to give some information that's valuable enough that it might actually change someone's life, that's all done with deliberate intention. I'm not doing that by accident. It's actually on purpose. And so for me, that's how you have to do it. You have to program these values into your day so that you're speaking them into existence on command and not waiting for a perfect moment for them to show up.
Yeah, and to that point, I'm curious, Brant, to get your perspective on the importance of diversity of opinion and perspective when it comes to establishing an inclusive corporate culture.
That's a great question. I actually feel like that's probably the most overlooked part of diversity and inclusion. I think we try to, we're very literal, I think, in a lot of cases where they're looking at race and gender identity and some of the larger buckets, disabilities, to sort of define what that means. But there's this whole other section of diversity of thought that really matters, right? It's what keeps us away from things like groupthink and sort of everybody just aligning into one particular area because we all look the same, talk the same, feel the same, whatever that is. There's so much richness that comes from diversity of thought. That again, it's something we have to be really intentional about. And with everyone's different, your experiences are different from my experiences, which is different from someone else. And so what you bring to the table is unique to you. That's why they are called, in my book, that's why they're called black sheep values, is because they're yours and not mine. And when you don't bring those to the table, there's something missing. And so when people want to know, like, what's that value they bring every day to work or to their family or to their life, it's those particular values that are theirs and only theirs. And if they are speaking those into existence with regularity, they have the ability to impact and bring that unique contribution that only they can.
Yeah, absolutely. And but one of the reasons I wanted to start this podcast when I started it 2.5 years ago was I was, I don't want to say disturbed, but alarmed by the way people, the vision in life today that we see on the news and other outlets on not really creating a sense of unity and a sense of building bridges of understanding. So my next question has to do with, how do you think we build better bridges of understanding with the goal of creating a better unity of perspective in the world?
I think that's one of the biggest challenges that companies are facing right now, right? Post-pandemic, this sort of great resignation that you've heard of, and people quitting and switching jobs, and the need now for remote work or hybrid work, and wanting to be home and closer to the family, and what the pandemic has done is it sort of forced people to discover a few of those values that are non-negotiable. And now that they know what those are, they're making decisions based on them, which is exactly what they should be doing. The challenge is, as an organization, organizations have the tendency of wanting to push values onto employees that actually aren't theirs. They're things that matter a lot to the organization, but they might not matter a lot to the individual employee. And so my suggestion is always, rather than pushing values that are not theirs onto the employees, we need to build bridges between each other to allow you to use what's most important to you to amplify what's most important to me, and vice versa. So rather than asking you to care for values that aren't yours, I need to know what your values actually are so that I can build a bridge between that and what I need done over here. And if we do that and we're both using the things that matter most to us as our motivation, then we usually can come to a great solution, a powerful solution, impactful solution, because we're using the things that matter most to us to drive that solution, as opposed to being spoon-fed something that I don't like or don't want, and being forced to carry out like it's my own personal value, that it just will never resonate with me in that way.
Yeah, and how do you, to that point, how do you define universal empowerment where we all have a chance to be put into an environment that allows us to really maximize our success?
That's, I call it feeding your sheep, right? That's making sure that you are intentionally engaging those values on a daily basis. The only way you're going to be happy is to honor those values as often as possible. When you don't, they have a tendency to stray, and when you need them most, those are lost sheep. And so we need to make sure that we are doing it. Again, you're going to hear me like a broken record talk about deliberate intention. We have to honor these values, feed these values with deliberate intention. That's what's going to give you that sense of universal fulfillment. That's what you start to remove your idea of fulfillment or happiness from an outcome, which we do not control, to the deliberate intention that goes into making a decision, which we do control. And if we honor the things that matter most to us, we've made a good decision, no matter what the outcome might actually be.
Yeah, Brent, you do so much work to empower others to really maximize and challenge themselves to be better. So I'm curious, when you have a personal or private moment, how do you sort of reconnect and find your personal center and really celebrate the wins that you personally have in life?
For me, it's diving into creativity, hope, impact, empathy, family, authenticity. Those are the things that matter most to me. And so it might be picking up my guitar and playing or performing somewhere. It might be painting or doing some artwork that I enjoy doing as well. It might be volunteering down at one of the local nonprofits that I volunteer for, to be able to bring hope to people down there who need it. It's doing these things with the intention that my only goal is to feed that value, is to honor that value. And I know if I do that, it allows me to center myself in the things that matter to me and to nobody else. So I can sort of block the world out and only focus on the things that I know are the things that make me happy, are the things that make me feel fulfilled, and make me feel like I'm living on purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Brett, I originally went to school to become a sports reporter, and I'll share that with you because I think both sports and music have a way of bonding people together to really bring them to a sense of understanding that they wouldn't otherwise be exposed to. So, what are your thoughts on how music can connect people? And I'm also curious to know, what's your favorite musical memory over the course of your career?
Well, what I would say is that, music connects our head and our heart, and that's a powerful combination. When you connect the head and the heart, it engages our limbic brain. Our limbic brain is where all of our emotional long-term memories are stored. It's sort of why we can remember song lyrics. It all factors into why we have favorites, a favorite song, a favorite movie, a favorite sports team, a favorite smell, favorite food, whatever that might be. It's all about connecting the head and the heart, right? So values and experience are sort of that powerful combination. For music, for me, gosh, I've had so many, 20 years in the music business. I've had quite a few incredible experiences. But we did a tour over in England at the Greenbelt Festival over there. I've always enjoyed going over there. It's a little different vibe than what it is here in the States. So I would say, 3 or 4 times we played over there always come back as really, really great memories. I've had an opportunity to play in Australia a few times. For whatever reason, it seems to me on a lot of occasions that overseas appreciate the type of music that my band played a little more than here in the States, where it's sort of more driven by electronics and not so much traditional musicianship. Any of the overseas stuff we've done over the years, I think, have been pretty incredible memories.
Yeah, it goes back to diversity of perspective, doesn't it?
100%. 100%.
Yeah, Brent, the few minutes I have left with you, I'm also curious to ask you about how we really challenge ourselves to be comfortable with stepping outside of our comfort zone and really maximizing potential.
That to me comes with proof that you're capable of doing something. And so if we're intentional about leaning into one of our values, and when we do it, we see positive results, we have to keep reminding ourselves of that positive result, right? That we've done it before. The proof exists, and we can shift away from trying to force ourselves to believe something. Belief is necessary in the absence of proof. But if we have actual experiences that we can look to and simply acknowledge that we've done it before, that builds that confidence that we can start to find that courage to do the things that might scare us, or the things that put us outside of our comfort zone in any way that doesn't feel quite right to us. So if we can continue to acknowledge that we've been there and done it successfully, we usually can find the courage to do it again.
Yeah, and my final question for you this morning has to do with, when you look at your own personal and professional legacy, I'm wondering how you want your moments of impact to be defined. Because, I interviewed a speaker a couple of months ago, and his name is David Avron. And David told me, when I asked him the question about legacy, it's not about the day you live versus the day you die. He said it's about the dash in the middle of your life, and that really defines the way you will be remembered. So my final question for you is, how do you want your legacy dash to be defined?
Just one word, and that's hope. I don't think there's anything more powerful than hope in this world. And the impact that I desire is to leave people with hope. Hope that their lives can get better. Hope that their relationships can get better. Hope their career can get better. Hope that they can achieve the things that they've set out them to do. I want them to have hope that there's a way and a plan and a process, and there's some work to be done. But if they're willing to do the work, they should have all the hope in the world that it's possible.
Absolutely. And Brant, finally, tell me if people want to get connected with you personally and connected with all the great work that you do, or the books that you've written, buddy. What's the best way they can do that?
Easiest thing is to go to the website. It's simply brantmenswar.com. It's BrantMenswar.com. Everything that they would ever need is right there.
Fantastic. Well, I really enjoyed our conversation this morning, my friend, about personal development, growth, and certainly deliberate intention, buddy. Your work in the space, and Tom, on my behalf, is most appreciated, and I want to thank you for engaging in conversation with me this morning.
Well, listen, man, I'm so incredibly thankful for the opportunity to speak with you. Really just love what you're doing. Just want to encourage you to keep doing it. The impact you have is profound. And so no matter what you're feeling, you just stay true to that course, and anything I can do to help along the way, I'm right there next to you.